I woke up that Monday morning like any other. Coffee at 6:15, emails by 6:30. By noon, everything I'd built over 7 years was obliterated with a single cold line. Position eliminated, effective immediately. They thought they'd buried me along with my warnings. What they didn't know, I'd saved every document, every email they wanted, erased. And at 5:01 p.m., exactly 1 minute after my NDA expired, I would open the door they thought was locked forever. My name is Isabella Crane, and for 7 years, I was the person who kept Helios Dynamics from burning itself to the ground. Risk management, senior director. The title sat heavy on my business cards, heavier still on my conscience. That morning started with the precision of a Swiss watch, the way I'd orchestrated every morning since joining the company. Black coffee in my thermal mug at 6:15, laptop open at 6:16, scanning overnight alerts from our Asian markets. My home office faced east, catching Denver's first light as it painted the Rockies gold. Everything in its place, color-coded folders aligned at right angles, 3 monitors displaying risk matrices, compliance dashboards, and the memo I'd sent yesterday flagging critical exposure in our upcoming merger. Except the memo wasn't there. I refreshed the system, nothing. Checked my sent items, empty. The risk assessment I'd spent 3 weeks compiling, documenting violations that could tank a $9 billion acquisition, had vanished like it never existed. My fingers moved across the keyboard with practiced efficiency, pulling up backup logs, server histories, access records. Each query returned the same result. No matching documents found. 7 years of methodology. And I'd never seen our system this clean. Too clean. At 8:47 a.m., my access to the merger files was revoked. No notification, no explanation. Just a simple, access denied message that might as well have been written in blood. I leaned back in my chair, studying the error message with the detachment of a surgeon examining an X-ray. In risk management, you learn to read patterns like tea leaves. This wasn't incompetence or a system glitch. This was surgical precision. Someone carefully excising me from the corporate body. My phone buzzed. Marcus Lyle, Chief Operating Officer. Small system maintenance today. Nothing to worry about. BTW, great work on the preliminary assessments. Preliminary. As if my final warnings were just rough drafts, I opened my personal laptop, the one IT couldn't touch, and connected my external drive. Every risk manager worth their salt keeps insurance, and I was worth more than they knew. My fingers found the familiar rhythm as I began my real morning routine. Downloading, copying, archiving, every email, every flagged transaction, every ignored warning. The timestamp read RC 9:23 a.m. when I created a new folder. Archive Final. Inside, I began organizing 7 years of corporate sins with the methodical care of an archivist preparing for war. They wanted to erase me from the system, fine. But I'd learned long ago that in the corporate world, information isn't just power, it's survival. And I had been documenting my survival since day one. By 10 a.m., my official access to the risk management dashboard went dark. By 10:15, I'd preserved everything that mattered on drives they'd never know existed. I stood, walked to my window, and watched Denver's financial district gleam in the morning sun. Somewhere in that glass and steel forest, in a boardroom with mountain views. They were probably congratulating themselves on their clean solution to the Isabella Crane problem. I allowed myself a small smile, the kind that never reaches the eyes. They'd forgotten the first rule of risk management: always account for the black swan, the outlier, the one variable you failed to control. They'd forgotten to account for me. The first cracks appeared 3 weeks before my termination. Hairline fractures in the corporate facade that only trained eyes could spot. It started with the Northbridge acquisition, a $9.2 billion merger that would make Helios Dynamics the third largest energy tech firm in North America. I'd been assigned to lead risk assessment, standard procedure for any deal this size. What wasn't standard was what I found buried in Northbridge's financial disclosures. Environmental violations in Texas, unreported, Safety incidents in Louisiana, classified as minor operational adjustments. Patent disputes that could trigger lawsuits worth hundreds of millions. All carefully sanitized in the reports being prepared for the board. I documented everything. My risk register grew thicker by the day. Each entry time-stamped, cross-referenced, backed by source documents. The kind of thorough work that had earned me a reputation as Helios's most meticulous risk officer. The kind of work that now, apparently, made me a problem. The Tuesday meeting should have been routine. Conference room Atlas, 15th floor, the one with the Kandinsky print that Marcus claimed to understand. I arrived with my preliminary findings, 43 pages of risk factors that needed immediate attention. Isabella, glad you could join us, Marcus said, though my calendar clearly showed I'd been invited weeks ago. Around the table, legal, strategy. Two faces from corporate development I didn't recognize. And, notably absent, the chief compliance officer who should have been there. I opened my report. We need to discuss the environmental liabilities. Northbridge has been systematically reclassifying, interrupted one of the unknown faces. We prefer reclassifying operational categories. More accurate. The room shifted, subtle but unmistakable. Like watching a school of fish suddenly change direction. The regulatory exposure alone could reach potential exposure, Marcus corrected. And we're confident in our mitigation strategies. I watched them edit reality in real time. Each damning finding became an optimization opportunity. Violations became areas for enhancement. Criminal negligence transformed into aggressive business positioning. After the meeting, I found key slides missing from the shared drive. My executive summary had been replaced with a version I'd never written, one that painted Northbridge as merely needing minor adjustments post-acquisition. That evening, I stayed late, copying everything to my personal drives. The original reports, the edited versions, the metadata showing who made changes and when. I photographed the physical documents they thought I wouldn't notice being removed from my files. Thursday brought a new development. A junior analyst named Tyler Morrison was assigned to shadow me, fresh from Wharton, eager, with the kind of artificial smile that suggested someone had coached him on relationship building. Just want to learn from the best, he said, positioning himself where he could see my screens. I watched him photograph my risk modeling framework with his phone when he thought I wasn't looking. Saw him forward my internal contacts to an email address I didn't recognize. He was there to extract my methods before they extracted me. Tyler, I said, pulling up a complex derivatives assessment. Let me show you something interesting about hidden risk factors. I spent 3 hours teaching him exactly what they wanted him to learn, while simultaneously creating an entirely separate record of what they were trying to hide. Every lesson became a documentation opportunity. Every question he asked revealed what they needed from me before I became expendable. Friday afternoon. The invitation came for a strategic alignment session the following Monday. Private calendar entry. No agenda. HR would be attending. I looked at Tyler, still at his desk, still pretending to study my risk models while texting someone updates on his phone. Learning a lot? I asked. Absolutely, he replied, that Wharton smile never wavering. You really see things others miss. Yes, I thought. Saving another batch of files to my encrypted drive, I really do. That weekend, I worked from home, building my archive with the patience of someone defusing a bomb. Because that's what this was, a bomb they'd built themselves, one they planned to bury along with my career. They just didn't know I was keeping the detonator. The trap revealed itself on a Wednesday afternoon, dressed in Hermes silk and carrying a bottle of 25-year-old Macallan. Marcus Lyle stood in my office doorway, his Tom Ford suit impeccable as always, holding the whiskey like a peace offering. Behind him, the Denver skyline stretched gray under gathering storm clouds. Isabella, he said, that practiced warmth in his voice. Thought we should talk? Mind if I come in? I gestured to the chair across from my desk, noting how he closed the door behind him. Soft click, the sound of privacy or conspiracy. You've been with us, what, 7 years now? He placed the Macallan on my desk, its amber liquid catching the fluorescent light. That's worth celebrating. 6 years and 11 months, I corrected, watching his face for tells. In poker and corporate politics, precision matters. He laughed, the kind that never touches the eyes. Of course you'd know exactly. That's what makes you so valuable. He paused, letting the word hang. Which is why I wanted to talk to you personally about the restructuring. Restructuring, the corporate euphemism that preceded most executions. The board's been reviewing our risk management approach, he continued, fingers drumming a nervous rhythm on his knee. They feel we might be over-engineering our assessments, creating unnecessary friction in the deal flow. Friction, I repeated. Is that what we're calling regulatory compliance now? His smile tightened. Isabella, you're brilliant. Nobody questions that. But sometimes brilliance needs to be channeled, focused on the bigger picture. He leaned forward, conspiratorial. Between us, the Northbridge deal is happening. The board's committed, the financing's in place. What they need now isn't more risk assessment. It's risk management that supports the strategic direction. You mean risk management that rubber stamps the decision already made? I mean risk management that understands business reality. He gestured to the Macallan. That's a thank you, by the way, for all your hard work. And maybe a suggestion that some things are better kept between professionals who understand discretion. The subtext wasn't subtle. Take the hint, take the whiskey, stop documenting problems. Marcus, I said, maintaining eye contact. My job is to identify risks that could destroy this company. That's not friction. That's fulfillment of fiduciary duty. His face underwent a subtle transformation, warmth bleeding away like heat from a corpse. Your job is what the company needs it to be. He stood, straightening his jacket. Keep the whiskey. Consider it a memento of better times. Oh, and Isabella? We should probably limit what we put in writing going forward. Email trails can be so easily misinterpreted. After he left, I examined the Macallan. Gift receipts still attached, charged to the corporate account under Client Relations. I photographed it, then locked it in my desk drawer. Evidence has many forms. The next morning, my invitation to the risk committee meeting was rescinded. Scheduling conflict, the update said. Tyler Morrison attended in my place, presenting my work as his own insights. By Thursday, I'd been removed from the Northbridge deal team entirely. Bandwidth optimization, according to the memo. My access to the deal room vanished. My risk assessments disappeared from the shared drives. 7 years of institutional knowledge being systematically erased. They assigned me to review vendor contracts instead. Busy work. The corporate equivalent of being sent to Siberia. But they'd made a crucial error, the kind that appears in every Greek tragedy. In their haste to silence me, they'd forgotten that I still had access to the audit logs. I could see every deletion, every revision, every attempt to bury my warnings. The digital fingerprints of a cover-up. I stayed late that Thursday, alone in my office as the building emptied. Through my window, Denver's lights began their nightly show. In the reflection of my monitor, I looked like a ghost already, translucent and fading. I pulled out a legal pad and wrote by hand, the old-fashioned way that leaves no digital trail. Timeline of erasure. Monday, risk assessments deleted. Tuesday, meeting access revoked. Wednesday, bribery attempt, Macallan, 400. Thursday, removed from deal team. At the bottom, I added, they want me to disappear quietly. But silence isn't consent, it's preparation. I locked the pad in my drawer with the whiskey. Tomorrow, they'd probably take my office too. But tonight, I had everything I needed. The trap had been set. They just didn't realize they were the ones standing in it. Conference Room Sierra. They'd named all the meeting rooms after mountain ranges, as if altitude could elevate the discussions held within. The irony wasn't lost on me. Sierra Nevada means snowy range in Spanish, a cold place for a cold execution. Monday, 9 a.m. sharp. I arrived at 8:57, finding them already assembled like a tribunal. Marcus at the head of the table. Susan from HR to his left with her folder of prepared scripts, and to his right, a young lawyer I didn't recognize, probably external counsel, brought in to ensure clean documentation. Isabella, please sit, Susan said, gesturing to the lone chair facing them. The positioning was deliberate, 3 against 1. Backs to the window so I'd be squinting against the morning light. I sat, placed my leather portfolio on the table, and clicked my pen. The sound echoed in the sterile room. Thank you for meeting with us, Susan began, as if I'd had a choice. As you know, Helios Dynamics is entering a period of strategic transformation. Transformation, I repeated, writing the word in my notebook. Please continue. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. He preferred employees who crumbled, who pleaded. My composure was ruining his script. Susan cleared her throat. After careful consideration, we've determined that your position has become redundant. The risk management function will be integrated into our broader compliance framework going forward. Integrated, I said, pen moving across paper, meaning dissolved. Restructured, the lawyer corrected quickly. Too quickly. I see. And my 7 years of risk assessments, the institutional knowledge, the ongoing investigations into the Northbridge acquisition? All materials remain property of Helios Dynamics, the lawyer said. As outlined in your original employment agreement and reiterated in this separation contract. Susan pushed a stack of papers across the table. We're offering a generous severance package, 3 months' salary, continued health benefits through year-end, and a positive reference letter. In exchange, we ask for a smooth transition and, of course, adherence to your existing confidentiality agreements. I picked up the document, reading each line with the attention I'd once given to risk assessments, hidden in paragraph 7, buried in subordinate clauses, an expanded NDA, retroactive immunity for all corporate decisions I'd flagged, and, the real poison, an admission that all my risk assessments had been preliminary and potentially flawed. You want me to discredit my own work, I said, not a question. We want a clean transition. Marcus finally spoke, one that protects everyone's interests. Everyone's. The company's, yours, the team's. He leaned forward slightly. Isabella, you're brilliant. But sometimes being right isn't the same as being effective. The board has made their decision about Northbridge. Your concerns have been noted and addressed. Addressed by eliminating the person who raised them. Silence stretched between us like a taut wire. This is effective immediately? I asked. We'll need your badge and company devices, Susan said, producing a receipt form. Security will escort you to gather personal items. You'll have 15 minutes. 15 minutes to pack 7 years. I almost admired the precision of the cruelty. I set down my pen, looking at each of them in turn. Marcus, who couldn't meet my eyes. Susan, who'd practiced this execution in front of a mirror. The lawyer, already mentally billing his hours. I need a moment to review the full severance agreement, I said. Of course, Susan replied. Take your time. I read every word twice, my mind cataloging not what was written, but what was feared. The expanded NDA, they knew I had information. The retroactive immunity, they knew they were vulnerable. The demand to discredit my work, they knew it was accurate. When I finished, I looked up at them. One question. The NDA expires in 6 months? The lawyer nodded. Standard terms. 6 months from date of execution. I picked up my pen, signed where indicated, then set it down with deliberate precision. Gentlemen, Susan. I stood, gathering my portfolio. I want you to remember this moment, this room, this decision. Don't mistake my silence for surrender. Marcus's jaw tightened. Is that a threat? It's an observation. You've confused removing me with removing the risks I identified. Those are two very different things. Security arrived, Tom from the third floor, looking apologetic. I handed over my badge, my company phone, my laptop, each surrender documented on Susan's forms. As Tom escorted me to my office, I heard Marcus call after me. The NDA, Isabella. Remember the NDA? I turned back, meeting his eyes for the last time as a Helios employee. Don't worry, Marcus, I never forget anything. In my office, I packed with economic precision, personal photos, my MIT diploma, the leather portfolio my father gave me when I graduated. I left the Macallan on the desk. Let them wonder about that. 15 minutes later, I walked through the lobby carrying a single banker's box. Tom beside me like a reluctant pallbearer. The morning light caught the glass doors, turning them into mirrors. I saw myself leaving, but more importantly, I saw what I was taking with me. Not in the box, in my mind. Every document, every email, every piece of evidence already archived where they couldn't reach. The NDA expired in 6 months, 182 days, 4,368 hours. I stepped into the Denver morning, free. They thought they'd eliminated a risk. They'd created a countdown. My apartment became a war room. Not the chaotic kind you see in movies, this was systematic, methodical. The kind of preparation that would stand up in court. The dining table disappeared under color-coded folders, red for environmental violations, blue for financial discrepancies, black for the emails where they explicitly acknowledged and dismissed my warnings. Each document copied in triplicate, cross-referenced, indexed. I worked with the precision of someone assembling evidence for a capital case. The external drive marked Archive sat in my safe, but that was just the first layer. Cloud storage under 3 different accounts, encrypted and backed up. USB drives hidden in places only paranoia could imagine. If they thought they could erase me, I'd make myself indelible. Tuesday afternoon, my brother-in-law called. David worked in financial forensics, the kind of person companies hired to find what others had hidden. Bella, you free for coffee? We met at a small place in Lodo, far from the financial district. David looked tired, the kind that came from seeing too much corporate malfeasance. I heard about Helios, he said without preamble. Also heard about the Northbridge deal. News travels. In certain circles. He stirred his coffee, choosing words carefully. If someone hypothetically had evidence of securities fraud, environmental violations, and deliberate misrepresentation to shareholders, that would be significant. I pulled out a single page, a summary I'd prepared. No letterhead, nothing traceable, just facts and figures. David read it twice, his expression darkening. Jesus, Bella, this isn't just corporate misconduct, this is criminal. Hypothetically, the SEC would be very interested, the EPA even more so. And if the board approved this, knowing the risks, he folded the paper, handed it back. Hypothetically, someone should ensure this information reaches the right people at the right time. 6 months, I said. The NDA expires in 6 months. A lot can happen in 6 months. Companies can complete mergers. Evidence can disappear. Statutes of limitations can complicate things. He met my eyes. But a smart person would know that NDAs don't protect criminal activity. And a really smart person would know exactly when and how to deploy that information for maximum impact. That evening, I refined my system. Each piece of evidence was tagged with multiple attributes: date, personnel involved, legal violation, financial impact. I built a database that could be searched, sorted, filtered, a guided missile of corporate accountability. The crown jewel was the email chain from August 15th. Marcus, the CFO, and 2 board members discussing my risk assessment. The CFO had written, Isabella's findings are accurate but inconvenient. Recommend we proceed and address any issues post-closure. Marcus had replied, agreed. Move her off the project. Can't have this in the final due diligence pack. Board member Harrison Walsh had the final word. Do what's necessary. Shareholders want this deal. I'd saved it all. Screenshots, forwarded copies, metadata proving authenticity. They'd conspired in writing, too arrogant to believe anyone would hold them accountable. By Thursday, I'd assembled what I called the disclosure package. 43 pages of executive summary, 600 pages of supporting documentation, financial models showing the real cost of the hidden liabilities, a timeline proving willful negligence. But the masterpiece was the risk register final, the complete version they thought they'd destroyed. Every risk I'd identified, probability assessments, impact analyses, and most damning, the mitigation strategies they'd chosen to ignore. It read like a prophecy of corporate doom, each warning time-stamped and attributed. I created multiple versions, one for the SEC, one for the EPA, one for the major shareholders, and a special edition for the board of directors, the ones who'd have personal liability if this went public. Friday night, I sat in my apartment, city lights spreading below like a circuit board, on my laptop. I typed a single email, saved in drafts. Subject: ignored warnings, Helios Dynamics, Northbridge acquisition, dear board members. Attached you will find the complete risk assessment you were prevented from seeing. Every word is documented. Every decision is traceable. Every signature has been preserved. You have one opportunity to correct this trajectory. Isabella Crane, former senior director. Risk management. I set the send date, 6 months from my termination. 5:01 p.m., 1 minute after the NDA expired. They'd given me 6 months of silence. I'd give them 6 months of false security. And then, when they'd forgotten about me, when the merger was complete and the champagne was flowing, I'd remind them that risk doesn't disappear just because you fire the risk manager. I poured myself a glass of wine, not the Macallan, something I'd bought myself. Outside, Denver slept, unaware of the bomb ticking in my apartment. 179 days to go. The countdown reached 0 on a Thursday, September 15th, 5 p.m. Mountain Time. The NDA expired with the anticlimactic silence of a digital clock rolling over. I sat in my home office, 3 monitors glowing in the amber light of late afternoon. Everything was ready. The email to the board, scheduled for 5:01 p.m. The SEC complaint, set to transmit at 5:02. The EPA notification at 5:03, a cascade of truth, precisely timed. On the center monitor, Helios Dynamics stock price, trading at $847 per share, up 12% since the Northbridge acquisition closed 2 months ago. They were celebrating in their glass tower, probably toasting their brilliant execution. On the left, my email client, the drafted message sitting in the outbox like a loaded weapon. Attachments included Risk Register Final, PDF, 247 pages. Evidence Archive. Zip, 2.3 GB. Board Communications. PDF, 46 pages of their own words condemning them. On the right, a simple text document with the timeline I'd constructed. Every decision, every cover-up, every moment they'd chosen profit over principle. 6 months of their comfort built on the assumption I'd stay silent. 5:00 p.m. The NDA officially expired. I was free. My phone buzzed. David, my brother-in-law. All clear on your end? Clear, I typed back. I'd consulted 3 lawyers in the past week, each reviewing different aspects without seeing the whole picture. Their unanimous conclusion: the NDA no longer bound me, and reporting potential criminal activity was protected whistleblower action. 5:30 p.m., I opened a new browser window, navigated to the SEC's whistleblower portal. My complaint was already uploaded, waiting, 1 click to submit. 5:45 p.m., I pulled up the list of email addresses I'd compiled. Board members' direct emails, not their corporate accounts, personal ones I'd gathered through 6 months of careful research. The institutional investors holding major stakes, the journalists who'd been sniffing around the merger but couldn't find the story. They'd all receive my package simultaneously. 5:50 p.m. 10 seconds. I thought about Marcus, probably in his corner office, maybe even looking at the same sunset I was watching. Did he ever wonder what I was doing? Did he assume I'd moved on? Found another job? Forgotten about Helios? 5:55 p.m. My finger hovered over the mouse. 7 years of my life at that company. 7 years of trying to protect them from themselves. They'd thrown me away like a broken tool, not realizing I'd kept all the receipts. 5:58 p.m. I thought about the environmental damage in Texas, the communities affected, the shareholders who'd been lied to, the employees whose pensions were invested in a company built on hidden rot. 5:59 p.m. This wasn't revenge. This was accountability. 5:01 p.m. I clicked send. The email left my outbox with no fanfare, just a small swoosh sound. Simultaneously, I submitted the SEC complaint, the EPA notification, and triggered the automated sends to journalists and investors. 5:01:15 p.m. My phone started buzzing. Unknown number. I let it ring. 5:01:30 p.m. Another call, then another. I turned the phone face down, watching the center monitor instead. 5:02 p.m. The first domino fell. A Bloomberg terminal alert appeared in my feed. Urgent, SEC reviewing new submission regarding Helios Dynamics merger. 5:03 p.m. My email dinged. Marcus Lyle. Subject line: Isabella, urgent, call me now. I didn't open it. 5:05 p.m. The phone rang again. This time I recognized the number. Harrison Walsh, chairman of the board. The man who'd written, "Do what's necessary," about silencing me. 5:07 p.m. Susan from HR tried calling, then the general counsel, then a number with a New York area code, probably their external law firm. 5:10 p.m. I pulled up Helios's stock price. Still $847, but the after-hours trading volume was spiking. Someone knew something was coming. 5:15 p.m. An email from the SEC. Complaint received. Reference number NY 2024-3847. An investigator will contact you within 48 hours. 5:20 p.m. I stood up, stretched, and walked to my kitchen. Poured myself a glass of the good wine, the bottle I'd been saving. Through my window. Denver's financial district was lighting up for the evening. Office windows glowing like pixels. Somewhere in that skyline, in the Helios Tower. Emergency meetings were being called. Lawyers were being summoned. Documents were being reviewed with new eyes, seeing what they'd missed or what they'd chosen to ignore. 5:30 p.m. I returned to my office. 43 missed calls. 97 unread emails. The stock price had dropped to $841 in after-hours trading. I opened a new document and typed, Day 1. The truth is now in motion. Then I shut down all 3 monitors, picked up my wine, and walked out onto my balcony. The evening air was crisp, carrying the first hint of autumn. They'd given me 6 months of enforced silence. Now it was their turn to listen. The boardroom on the 20th floor of Helios Tower had been designed to intimidate. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a table carved from a single piece of Brazilian walnut, chairs that cost more than most people's monthly salary. But at 5:47 p.m. on that Thursday evening, it looked like a triage center. Harrison Walsh, chairman of the board, stood at the head of the table, his usual composure cracking like ice under pressure. His laptop showed my email, the attachments still unopened, as if not looking at them might make them disappear. How the hell did she? He stopped, looking at the general counsel. The NDA, you said the NDA was bulletproof. It was. It expired at 5 p.m. today. The lawyer replied, sweat beading on his forehead despite the climate control. She sent this at 5:01. 1 minute. CFO Jennifer Cross laughed, but it sounded like breaking glass. She waited 6 months to the minute. Marcus sat hunched over his phone, scrolling through something with increasing panic. It's not just us. She sent it to Reuters, Bloomberg, the Wall Street Journal, the SEC, The EPA? He looked up, face pale. The institutional investors. BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, they all have it. What exactly do they have? Asked board member Patricia Novak, who'd joined via video from New York. Harrison opened the first attachment. The risk register final filled the screen. My name watermarked on every page. As they scrolled through, the room grew quieter. Each page was another nail in their collective coffin. Page 47. Environmental violations with photographic evidence. Page 98. Email chains discussing the cover-up. Page 156. Financial models showing true liability exposure. Page 201. Their own words, agreeing to suppress my findings. Jesus Christ, someone whispered. Marcus's phone buzzed. Trading's been halted, NYSE cited pending news. The general counsel was typing frantically on his laptop. The SEC just announced a formal investigation. They're demanding document preservation, effective immediately. Can we claim the documents are fake? Harrison asked desperately. They're not fake, Marcus said quietly. Look at the metadata, the email headers, the timestamps. It's all authentic. She kept everything. Jennifer pulled up her terminal. We're down 8% in after-hours trading. If this continues when markets open tomorrow, it'll be a bloodbath, Harrison finished. The conference phone rang. Harrison answered on speaker. Harrison, it's Michael Chen from BlackRock, the largest institutional investor, holding 7% of Helios stock. We need an emergency board meeting tonight. Michael, I can explain. No explanations. We've reviewed the documents. If even half of this is accurate, we're looking at securities fraud. The board has potential personal liability, criminal liability. The line went dead. Patricia's face on the video screen was rigid with fury. Marcus, you told us she was a disgruntled employee. You said her concerns were overblown. They were. She didn't understand the business reality. The business reality? Harrison turned on him. The reality where we're now facing EPA fines that could reach hundreds of millions, where our D&O insurance won't cover us because we knowingly suppressed material information. Another phone rang. Susan from HR answered, listened, then hung up. That was security. There are news vans pulling up outside. The general counsel stood up. I need to be clear with everyone. Based on what I'm seeing, we're each potentially facing personal exposure. I recommend everyone retain individual counsel immediately. You're our counsel, Harrison shouted. I represent the company. And the company's interests may no longer align with yours personally. The room erupted. Board members shouting over each other, phones ringing incessantly, laptops pinging with alerts. Through it all, Marcus sat staring at page 243 of my document, the email where he'd written, "Move her off the project. Can't have this in the final due diligence pack." At 6:15 p.m., Harrison slammed his hand on the table. Enough. Emergency protocols. Lock down all documents. No one talks to media. We meet with crisis management at 7 doors. As the board members filed out, Marcus remained seated, still staring at his laptop. On his screen, a new email had arrived. From me. Subject, receipt confirmed. No body text, just a read receipt showing that every board member, regulator, and journalist had opened my original email. Harrison saw it too. She's watching. She knows we're in this room right now, scrambling. Marcus closed his laptop slowly. We fired the wrong person. Harrison. No, Harrison replied, looking out at the Denver skyline where news helicopters were beginning to circle. We fired exactly the right person. We just did it 6 months too late. By 7 p.m., Helios Dynamics stock had dropped 15% in after-hours trading. By morning, it would be worse. But I wasn't watching the stock price anymore. I was watching the headlines starting to appear. SEC launches investigation into Helios Dynamics. Whistleblower exposes massive cover-up at energy giant. Board members face personal liability in fraud allegations. The chessboard hadn't just been flipped, it had been shattered. The lake house sat 40 miles from Denver, hidden among pines and aspens that whispered secrets to the mountain wind. I'd rented it under my maiden name, paid cash, told no one where I was going. Not hiding, just choosing my solitude. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing for 3 days. Lawyers, journalists, federal investigators, former colleagues. Each call a testament to the chaos I'd unleashed with a single click. I let them all go to voicemail. The wooden deck faced west, where the sun was beginning its descent behind the Continental Divide. I sat in an Adirondack chair, bourbon in hand, not the Macallan Marcus had tried to buy my silence with, but something I'd chosen myself. The evening light turned the lake into hammered gold. Behind me, through the window, my laptop displayed the aftermath on mute. CNN running a segment on corporate whistleblowers. Bloomberg analyzing the 43% drop in Helios stock. The EPA announcing the largest environmental fine in Colorado history. The Department of Justice confirming criminal investigations. Marcus Lyle, suspended pending investigation. Harrison Walsh, resigned as chairman. The Northbridge merger, under federal review. Shareholder lawsuits, multiplying like cancer cells. But I wasn't watching anymore. I was reading a different email. One from a junior analyst at Helios I'd never met. Ms. Key Crane, you don't know me, but I wanted to thank you. We all knew something was wrong, but we were too scared to speak up. You gave us our voices back. 17 similar messages sat in my inbox. The employees who'd been silenced. The analysts who'd been ignored. The good people trapped in a bad system. They were why this mattered. The irony wasn't lost on me. They'd paid me 3 months' severance to buy my silence. I'd used that money to finance my time in this lake house, to prepare the very revelation they'd tried to prevent. They'd funded their own downfall. As darkness settled over the mountains, lights began to appear across the lake. Other houses, other lives. People unaware that a few miles away sat the woman who'd brought down a $9 billion company with an email sent at exactly the right moment. I thought about revenge, what it really meant. They'd probably call this a revenge story. Disgruntled employee destroys former company. But that wasn't it. Revenge implies emotion, anger, heat. What I'd done was cold, precise, mathematical. I'd simply returned their risks to them, with compound interest. The truth was its own revenge. My phone rang again. This time, I recognized the number, David, my brother-in-law. You safe? He asked when I answered. Perfectly. The FBI wants to talk to you. You're going to need protection. Already arranged, former federal prosecutor, the best in Denver. And after, what's next? I looked out at the lake, its surface mirror smooth in the twilight. There's a standing offer from the SEC, senior advisor position, helping them identify corporate fraud. You're going to take it? Maybe. Or maybe I'll start my own firm. Risk assessment for investors who actually want the truth. David laughed. Isabella Crane, corporate nightmare. No, I corrected. Corporate reality check. After we hung up, I poured another bourbon and pulled out a legal pad, the same kind I'd used to document my erasure from Helios. But this time, I wrote something different. Lessons from the ashes. Document everything. Truth has a patience that lies cannot match. They pay you severance to leave quietly, use it to prepare your voice. The best revenge isn't emotional, it's procedural. When they say, don't take it personally, remember, accountability is very personal to those who avoid it. The moon rose over the mountains, full and bright, turning the lake into silver. Somewhere in Denver, Helios Tower stood dark except for the crisis management teams working through the night, trying to salvage something from the wreckage. But here, in this quiet place, I felt something I hadn't experienced in 7 years. Peace. Not the peace of surrender, but the peace of completion. I'd been their risk manager to the very end. I'd just delivered my final assessment from outside their walls. Marcus had given me that bottle of Macallan with a message about keeping things between professionals. He was right about one thing. This had been utterly professional. I'd given them 6 months to fix their mistakes, to come clean, to do the right thing. They'd chosen to wait out my silence instead. Now they were learning what every risk manager knows. The cost of ignoring warnings isn't paid in the warning phase. It's paid when reality arrives, with interest. I raised my glass to the moon, to the lake, to the mountains that had watched it all in silence. To Payback, I whispered. Served at exactly 5:01 p.m. The night accepted my toast with the grace of a universe that keeps perfect books. And somewhere in that darkness, I could hear the sound of a tower falling, one stock point at a time. Thank you for listening to this story of corporate justice. Where are you tuning in from today? I'd love to hear in the comments below. Let's connect across the miles. If this tale of truth-defeating power resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. What would you have done in Isabella's position? The conversation continues with you.